Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Full Court Press. If you're watching on YouTube, you get a nice view of not me. Camera decided to try and follow me out the door, and then then suddenly it wasn't looking at me anymore. So, welcome on into the Full Court Press. Jason Walker here with Eric Frandsen, walking in right as the door, walking in the door right as the show begins.
That's right. Let's go.
That's what I did a lot during the summer. Is I wouldn't walk in until like right as the door was going, or right as the show was starting. Eric could be sitting here getting everything ready. So nice to be back in the chair after spending a week in Vegas. Solid week it was. Utah State claiming the Mountain West Tournament title, adding to their trophy case just a week after claiming the regular season title. It's the first time the Aggies have won the outright regular season title and the Mountain West Tournament title in the same season in the Mountain West. Of course, it'll also be the last time, as they'll be moving to the Pac-12, so they can't win any more Mountain West championships. So we'll look back on that. We'll also look ahead to the NCAA Tournament. Aggies drawing a 9 seed, which didn't have a lot of people in Aggie Nation happy.
No.
Jerrod Calhoun certainly wasn't happy about it. And then I think there are 6 other teams, either 5 or 6 other teams in the Mountain West who will be in postseason tournaments. However, none of them are in the NCAA tournament. I believe all of them are in the NIT, as I don't think anybody got an invite to the Crown, or maybe somebody did, but if anybody did, they turned it down. And the CBI isn't even happening this year. So that's where we're going with postseason play.
We had kind of this phase where all kinds of postseason tournaments were getting created for basketball. It's like if you still had a pulse, you got invited to one of these.
Yeah.
But now it's like pivoting and it's going back the other way. And we have teams, like good teams, turning down opportunities to play in the NIT, which arguably was,
which isn't the craziest thing, because like
below the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, that's not too crazy though, because that's been happening for years. People turning down the NIT.
Well, you'd have some cases here and there, but now it seems like it's all over the place.
Yeah,
and to see a team like Wyoming go to the NIT seems like a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, a little bit of a surprise. So let's get into talking about the Aggies, because we got to get through talking about the Mountain West Tournament. And you had some, Eric?
And we do. But before we do that, if I can, give me a second here. One of our former colleagues passed away this past weekend. Dave Denton, a former colleague of ours here at the Cache Valley Media Group, had been here for many years, worked on, gosh, I can't remember all the stations that he worked on here, but it was the Car, then it was Cool 103.9. He was our main guy, keeping things down for our oldies station. And as it kind of transitioned into classic hits and things like that, Dave also helped organize a lot of things that we did for high school sports. And he was kind of the guy that managed a lot of that, at least the producers on the back end and things like that before I started to get more involved with that. Dave was a guy who had a career in radio, loved doing that. But unfortunately, we just discovered this past weekend that he passed away. Complications from pancreatic cancer. Never fun to go through. So certainly all of us here at the Cache Valley Media Group, our thoughts are with his dear wife, Teresa. But I enjoyed my time working with Dave and having his association in the building. And unfortunately, Dave Denton, a longtime associate of ours and colleague of ours here at the Cache Valley Media Group, just passed away this past weekend. So I want to make sure I got that out there before we get off on other things, because he absolutely deserves that recognition. One of a career radio guy passes, that it's always kind of a sad moment for us. But he wasn't that old. So bottom line is, always got to take care of yourself where you can, and seek the help and the care when you need it, and take that seriously. So sad to see Dave Denton pass this weekend.
Yeah, life can be cruelly short at times.
Yes. So thank you. don't mean to start the show on a downer, but I wanted to make sure that we gave proper recognition that's due for one of our colleagues and a guy who spent many years here in these studios with us, and his family is there grieving right now.
Yeah, I'm glad you're able to say something because I know I didn't really know him. I don't even know if I actually had the pleasure of meeting him because I think he predated my time here at Cache Valley Media Group. So
yeah,
unfortunately, there's not a whole lot I can say personally, but obviously I know he was very important because a lot of people around here are saying, "Oh, Dave Denton died," and I was like, "There's not much I can say personally, but I can see just how important he was to the company based off the reactions of people who did know him personally."
Yeah. But okay, so that being said, it was, as we mentioned, it was a pretty crazy week in Las Vegas for the Utah State Aggies. Utah State won the regular season, getting that number 1 seed. It hasn't been very often that Utah State has been the number 1 seed going into the Mountain West Conference tournament.
I think only ever twice.
Yeah, and so usually Utah State is somewhere else in the bracket. And so being there again as the number 1 seed, it just reminded me just how important that is to be the number 1 seed, because you get to watch your opponents in real time, scout your opponents in real time after you've already played.
Yeah, after you've played, after the stress of, because teams will send scouts, say you're playing in the second game, like of the semifinals, we'll just say. You'll have coaches from your team at the game before you because there's prep that needs to happen, and there are coaches whose job it is to look ahead.
Yeah.
And they talk about don't look ahead, but there are some coaches whose literal job is to look ahead. But that's their special job. They got to go do it.
Yeah.
But it's a lot easier if you're a coach where you get to think, okay, it's one of these 2 teams we're playing and we don't got to think about what our team just did. And the stress isn't there.
Right. Yeah. So being able to scout the teams in real time after you've already played, have that extra time of rest. Look, because the first few games for Utah State, it was middle of the day, nothing too stressful. But then as the tournament went on, I mean, it got later and later for their opponents. And the turnaround was shorter and shorter. San Diego State had a knockdown, drag-out fight with New Mexico on Friday night. And there was already a delay for Utah State's game because of CBS Sports counting other games. And so the Aggie game before was already delayed. Then there were a lot of free throws that were shot, and it made that game go a little bit longer. Then San Diego State and New Mexico had to play. They're already later than they anticipated. Their game goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So the San Diego State Aztecs, they didn't get to their hotel until maybe 1 a.m., maybe?
Probably later.
Probably later, because the game's done. You got media availability. You got to do treatment on like ankles and knees. Then you got to get on the bus to go to the hotel and all that stuff. And so you're maybe 1:30 before you get to the hotel, and then time to wind down and actually try to get some rest and turn around and have to do prep and film study and get another opponent for a championship game the following afternoon. And it's just a huge advantage for Utah State getting that number 1 overall seed.
Yeah, and I think it really showed because, San Diego State faded down the stretch. They were going blow for blow with the Aggies in the first half and for a decent chunk of the second half. But as Utah State didn't, fall down after the, several different great runs that San Diego State had, then the Aztecs just eventually ran out of gas. They were also injured, beat up. The Aggies, one of the things they've been really fortunate this season is to not have really any games missed to injury. I think Drake Allen missed the 1 game, I think, and everyone else playing every game. Even Zach Keller, who rolled his ankle in 1 game, just about dislocated his shoulder in another, got his shoulder hurt in the middle of the San Diego State game, was running down the court, holding his shoulder. Was like, I'm playing this possession with 1 arm.
I'm still trying to defend.
And then he comes back in the game and plays crucial minutes for the Aggies down in the second half. So the Aggies had a little bit more health, but that's part of having depth is you get to use it all. In San Diego State, they had a lot of depth, and it helped them still get to the championship game, even without Elsie Harrington playing, and then they're without Miles Heide, and even without those 2 players, they were still very much going toe-to-toe with the Aggies. So that's a credit to them. But the Aggies, and being in that more favorable time slot, and having the extra depth, eventually San Diego State just couldn't keep up. And Utah State ends up completing, the redemption arc, as Jerrod Calhoun kind of referred it to. Because something I noted on social media, so the numbers were, so in the last 5 games, the Aggies lost to UNLV, Nevada, San Diego State. They did have wins against Grand Canyon, New Mexico. But within those 5 games, they lost to UNLV, Nevada, San Diego State. Even had another loss to UNLV outside of that stretch. And they lost to those teams by a combined 47 points. And on defense, gave up an average of 87 points per game. Those were 3 of their worst games of the season. Granted, Nevada was a 3-point loss. Like, that wasn't the worst thing. But still, defensively weren't on point. And they got blown out by UNLV and San Diego State. In the Mountain West tournament, in facing all 3 of those teams, I mean, we had texters on here who were like, we kind of hope that they face UNLV and then Nevada and San Diego State, because that would be like poetic, and that's what ended up happening.
Yeah.
But in the Mountain West tournaments, the Aggies didn't allow a single one of those teams to score 70 points. I think San Diego State was the high, and they were, or no, Nevada was, and they scored 66, I think.
Yeah. San Diego State scored 62.
Yeah, 62. UNLV scored, I think, exactly 60. So the Aggies allowed an average of 62.7 points. Basically 2 weeks after allowing all 3 of those teams to average 87, none of them below 80. And then they don't allow a single one of those teams to go above 66. And then after losing to those 3 teams by a combined 47, they win by a combined 44. Which is something like a 91 point, whatever 47 plus 44 is. It's a 90-plus point swing against those 3 teams. Like that, if you call anything a redemption tour, that's what that is.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Such a difference for Utah State this year compared to last year. I know there were concerns as we got near the end of the season that this team was losing some games. And people are like, oh, it's the hashtag Calhoun collapse again. And I'll be honest, I started to wonder if the same thing was happening. But last year, the team looked like they were out of gas. Teams looked like they had figured some things out against Utah State. This year, yeah, Utah State struggled in some of their games, and they gave up a lot of points in a few of those, as you mentioned. But I never had the sense that the team was really out of gas. But then watching how Coach Calhoun managed his team in this tournament, especially in the early games, he really leaned in on his depth and his versatility. He rotated guys in and out a lot. He didn't just lean on the few guys that he trusted to say, you got to carry us. And then, they eventually would run out of gas and get wore out. That didn't happen. Utah State had fuel in the tank. They played 10 guys in the championship game. And it's not because they had a blowout and they're just, human victory cigars. These were all guys who played minutes and played meaningful minutes. And that was the story for the whole tournament. So I think that speaks to 2 things really for this team and this coaching staff. One, that the coaches trusted their players to give them chances to, if they made a mistake, to still get back in and redeem themselves. That was an issue earlier on, but it seems they've figured that out. But also, it speaks to the players themselves. In listening to and understanding what the coaches are trying to tell them and teach them so that they can gain those coaches' confidence, that they know they can turn to them and have them play meaningful minutes. Gary Clark, through 3 games, that was great. Zach Keller, through 3 games, was great. Because those are some guys that we've seen from time to time. If they're not on, if they're not playing fantastic, they'll get sent to the bench and never see the court again. But they kept getting rotated in. They kept playing games. Tucker Anderson, we didn't see him earlier in the year. We've been seeing him a little bit more lately because he is earning coaches' trust. And so I thought that it was twofold, that the players are working hard in practice, they're performing well on the court, and the coaches are giving them more trust, that they believe in them, that they can do meaningful things when they're on the court, and they're not going to really adversely hurt the team while being on the court. And if they do make a mistake, they figure they've trust them enough to come back out and redeem themselves, or at least not, bring the team down again. And so I was really impressed with how this team and coaches kind of went through this Mountain West Conference tournament with the versatility and depth and really using that as a strength for Utah State.
Yeah, I really love, I think you really hit it on the head there, especially with guys like Gary Clark and Zach Keller, where these are players who can oftentimes end up combining for like 10 minutes of play on the court. And you feel like there are times when they should be getting more. But, against UNLV, Gary Clark, he plays 15 minutes, and they were good minutes, 7 points, 6 rebounds, and, picked up a few fouls, but was effective and was really important when they were trying to deal with some potential matchup issues. They, defending, he was defending with his chest, going toe-to-toe, chest to chest with, some of the talented UNLV players. And he didn't get as much, playing time against Nevada, but that was where Zach Keller stepped up and played 27 minutes. That's where he had one of there was a season high in minutes, and it was dang near a career high. He had one game when he was at Wake Forest where he played 29. But he came out and played a ton of minutes. But then in the championship game, Gary Clark was arguably the Aggies' best big. 11.6 rebounds. Heck, statistically, he was. Because he had as many points as Carson and Zach combined and almost as many rebounds as both of them combined. Actually, is 9-6, so not that close. But he was plus 13 on the court. When he was on the court, the Aggies were plus 13, and Carson Temple was -1 and Zach Keller was +1. So Gary Clark was the most impactful big in that championship game and had a lot of big moments inside, outside, had, blocks. So
we've seen games where our biggest concerns were if Utah State plays against a team that has talented big players. Grand Canyon, that was a problem. UNLV, that was a problem. San Diego State, that's been a problem. Well, through this tournament, Utah State played some teams that had some size, and they got through that just fine.
Yeah,
because Zach Keller, Gary Clark, Carson Temple, and I think you have to include Tucker Anderson for part of that. But the big guys came through in this tournament. They played great. Because they played solid. They weren't like leading the team in points or leading the team in rebounds necessarily, but they played really solid minutes for Utah State. They were not a liability, and they were unafraid to go up against opponents and their size and their strength and their athleticism, and it wasn't that big of a deficit for Utah State to have those guys out there.
Yeah, like as you said, they weren't really leading the team in scoring that much because I think in the most points that the bigs combined for in any of the 3 games was 18. That's good. That's not a ton. MJ Collins, I think, had 3 games of 8. He had 2 games of more than 18 points by himself. The other game he had 12. So, Adlon Elmin had 1 game where he scored 15. So while scoring was there and they were consistent, because they were getting combined between 15 and 18 points in pretty much every single game, it was, not getting burned so much on the boards. At the start of the San Diego State game, there were some issues because Magoon Guath, I think, had 4 offensive rebounds through about 3/4 of the first half. He ended the game with 5 in 32 minutes. So they walled up and did way better in the second half. And just across all the games, they were not necessarily individually rebounding well, because, again, any one of those individuals topped out at about 6 or 7 rebounds. But it's part of the team rebounding because they box out and the guards will come in and get rebounds. And so the Aggies, they were only out-rebounded by 2 against San Diego State. So pretty much even on the boards there. They out-rebound Nevada by 3. And then, let's see, I think it was, they were slightly out-rebounded by UNLV. So while they didn't dominate the boards in any of the games, they were on par with their opponent in every single game, which is the kind of thing you want. Like, you don't need to win the rebounding battle by 15 to win by 20. You just need to be good on your rebounds. And especially if you shoot the ball really well, you're not going to grab a ton of rebounds because there aren't any offensive rebounds for you to grab. And you just got to grab a few defensive ones. And so that's what the Aggies did. They shot really well throughout most of the tournament, so they didn't have to go get offensive rebounds. And then they were, getting offensive rebound or getting defensive rebounds where they needed to. And so that's where the bigs were commendable. The guards obviously deserve some respect for a lot of times they were going up in the trees to go get those.
Yes.
Mason and Colby, guys like that. And MJ getting some more rebounds. Well, like Drake, I think, had a 9 rebound game in the tournament. So a lot of different ways where the Aggies just went out and were just tougher than they'd been recently, which, I think that was something that I was saying late in the season, is that Utah State's problems weren't so much capability, it was mental. Go out there and be tougher, because they're capable, they're athletic, they can be physical, they've got some size, they don't have elite size and length, they have good size and length, and if they go out there and use it, this is the kind of stuff that happens. And then when they pair that with the offensive talent they had, they go out there and they score 80, 79, and then 73 in the third game in 3 nights. You still manage to put up 73 points on tired legs.
Yeah.
So that was really good from the
Super
Aggies.
impressive the way Utah State this really dialed up their defense, the way that a lot of different guys contributed, spread it around, a lot of different guys got involved. And so I think that really speaks to coaching, but also to the players buying in and being connected and playing their best basketball at the right time.
So we got to take a break here. We'll come back. We've got a lot of texts rolling up on the Young Power Sports of Logan text line. We will get to those, and then we'll start transitioning into talking about Utah State, their selection as a 9 seed in the NCAA tournament, where they'll be taking on Villanova on Friday. So all that beginning next here on the Full Court Press. Welcome on in to the Full Court Press. Jason Walker here with Eric Frandsen on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM The Fan. Streaming online at 1069thefan.com and on the 1069 The Fan mobile app, as well as streaming live on YouTube. The Fan KLGN is the account on YouTube you can check, and you can find us, myself, Eric, myself, Jason Walker, and Eric Frandsen. Can't call myself Eric Frandsen. No.
That could get a little bit weird.
That would get a little bit weird. So we're glad that you guys could join us, however you're listening, or if you're listening on the podcast feed, which you can find on 1069thefan.com or on the mobile app, or even watch the video replays afterward on YouTube. However you're listening or watching, we're glad you're following us on the show. You can text 435-339-0321. That's our Young Power Sports Logan text line. And 6021, who I think was probably texting the Aggie pregame show, our KVNU Aggie pregame show.
Yeah, probably. Score prediction.
Bunch of score predictions. I do need to mention that their prediction for the championship game was pretty close. They predicted 72-65 for the Aggies. Final score 73-62.
Ooh, that is close.
They were 1 point off on the Aggies, 3 points off on the Aztecs.
Not bad.
So, yeah.
Not bad.
Other texts, we have 4488. Saying, great Tourney run and love that we swept the titles and big awards in our final year. Feels like the committee locked us into a 9 seed before the Mountain West Tourney even started, though. Do you think the seeding bias will get much better in the pack? Adding Gonzaga and cutting Air Force certainly helps. St. Mary's got a lot of credit for beating Gonzaga once at home and doing nothing else. I get that they have slightly higher metrics and don't have any bad losses, but like we do, but it is crazy that they get a 7 seed and only one quad 1 win. Also can't help but feel that coach is a lot more likely to leave if he feels USU will always get screwed with a bad seed.
Yeah, so seeding is a topic. I agree. I feel like Utah State got the raw end of the deal here, and a lot of other people are taking notice of this. Not just that Utah State got a 9, but that the Mountain West only sent 1 team. And we've looked at this through the season. We've looked at bracket matrix. We look at the NCAA net, Ken Palm, and what I think it was Dan Dickow who pointed this out. Says it looks like too many people are just focusing on metrics and not actually watching basketball. Because if you actually watch basketball, there was good basketball in the Mountain West. Yes, some teams had some stumbles early, and that seemed to be hung around their necks for the next 3 months and was held against them. But the Mountain West only sends 1 team to the NCAA tournament is a travesty. It's the first time that's happened since, 2017?
Yeah, it's been almost a decade.
This is bonkers. And so I think that the fact that there was only 1 team for the Mountain West that went signifies that the committee did not value what was going on in the Mountain West. And if Utah State or whomever won the regular season and the conference title, came through through a mediocre season in the Mountain West, according to them, then why would you seed them any higher?
Yeah.
So had the Mountain West appeared as a stronger league, then Utah State could have demanded and should have received a higher seed than they did.
I think the problem that the Mountain West ran into is it just ended up kind of cannibalizing itself.
Yes.
Because you look at San Diego State. What happened to them at the end of the season? They lost 5 games in a 9-game stretch. If they cut out half of those losses, they're in the tournament.
Yeah.
Like if I went back and looked at our mid-February, full court press episodes when we were, talking about bracketology at that point, I'd wager that we were probably talking about both San Diego State and New Mexico as decently likely teams in. But Utah State, they lost a bunch of games late. If they don't lose against Nevada, San Diego State, and UNLV, as much as the redemption tour was a really nice story, if they don't lose those games to Nevada, San Diego State, UNLV, they would enter the tournament on, I'm not counting all that, but it looks like 15 games in a row wins. They lost to UNLV on January 20th. If they don't lose any of those 3 games, or heck, if they lose only one of those games, again, you'd have 1 loss since January. Think the Aggies get a 9 seed with that? No, they don't. So the Mountain West hurt itself.
Yeah.
Like I get that, the history of the Mountain West has warranted a lot of teams in the tournament, but a lot of times, those teams, one, they'd have much better non-conference schedules. We talked about this in, late December as non-conference is wrapping up. Nobody really had that good of a non-conference. Utah State did, but again, that was mostly around the fact that they'd lost only one game. They'd played 2 quality non-conference games, and they'd split them. And Utah State was perhaps the best, where other teams had played tougher, like Boise State and San Diego State, and to some degree, New Mexico had played some tough teams as well, but none of them had done particularly well. Like, there was a good game here or there. New Mexico beat Santa Clara. I think Boise State also beat VCU, or maybe it was New Mexico. I think Boise State got at least one win in there. But yeah, so New Mexico, they were the ones who beat VCU. So like, nobody really had a good non-conference. And then at the end, when there's kind of more scrutiny, because you talk about watching basketball games, well, nobody's watching everybody.
No.
Through, and so you have to rely on the metric because nobody's watching all these games. John Ross' team probably is, but nobody else is watching all these. Like for me, I can barely get around to watching every single one of the Mountain West teams more than 3 or 4 times each. And half of those because they play the Aggies twice. Like I watched Air Force once, which was actually probably a wise decision. But I can watch San Diego State like 5 times in a year. Boise State 4 or 5 times. Like who's also watching every single one of the A10 teams and every single one of the, they don't have time for that. So, but as March comes around and you start focusing, because a lot of these games are on TV, they're all happening on like the same days. And so you're like, we're just going to watch college basketball all day. When that starts happening, that's when the Mountain West started losing.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you got to play your best when people are paying attention the most. And the top 3 teams just took turns winning and losing.
Yeah. So,
and some losing more often than winning. And then granted, the schedule the Mountain West put together made it so they were all playing each other at the very end.
Yeah.
So it was tough for any team to really separate.
Yeah. So not only, they were losing, and it's not just they were only losing to each other, because if it was just Utah State, San Diego State, and New Mexico doing rock, paper, scissors between each other, you can survive that if those are your top 3 teams and working. But like New Mexico, they lost to Nevada and Colorado State in the last 3 games. They lost 4 of their last 6 games. 2 of those were to Utah State and San Diego State. So again, if we're talking rock, paper, scissors, but still losses to Colorado State and Nevada didn't help. Mentioned San Diego State, their losses. They lost to, in their 5 losses in their last 9 games. Grand Canyon, Colorado State, Boise State. That was in there. And then Utah State, Nevada, and UNLV. They lost to those teams. So like this, you can't be complaining too much about the Mountain West not getting any teams in the tournament. When you start adding it up, which of them earned, and I know I go on my whole thing about deserving and whatnot, I don't have time to get into that again, but which of them really earned their way into the NCAA tournament, or at least to be higher in that conversation based on what they did throughout the season? None of them performed well in non-conference. Credit to San Diego State for playing a tough schedule as always, but they didn't perform like they did the last few years against that schedule. They got murdered by most of the good teams on their schedule, lost to one of the cupcake teams they played, and they had like a quality win in the non-conference.
Well, I think the there's always tough comparisons that take place, like who's in and who's out when you try to compare those who are in versus those who didn't make it. And I think a lot of folks are looking at the West Coast Conference, getting 3 teams in. Gonzaga, yes, they should be in. St. Mary's, they were a 22 in the net. Yes, they only had 1 quad 1 win, but they played well. On the 26 wins, they played well in the course of their season. Santa Clara, they're 40 in the net. They had 2 quad 1 wins, but then you look at some of the other teams out of the Mountain West. Besides those 3, nobody else is in the top 100 in the West Coast. The Mountain West had 9 teams in the top 100. Or was it 8? 8 or 9 teams. West Coast only had 3. So yes, it's easier to stack wins against mediocre or bad teams in the West Coast Conference than it was to stack wins in the Mountain West. So that's where my frustration is, that the Mountain West didn't get very much respect this year, and really wasn't getting much respect for most of the season. They didn't do themselves any favors, and we've gone over that. But to see that a conference that has so many dogs in it got 3 teams in, and the Mountain West only got 1, that's where it surprises me and is frustrating for the Mountain West Conference.
Okay, but where do those West Coast Conference teams rank in like KenPom? Again, I don't care about next. It's a crappier ranking system. You look at KenPom or Haslametrics, all these others. Santa Clara is ranked higher than San Diego State and New Mexico. And you add up all these other things. Like, yeah, sure, the Mountain West top to bottom is a better conference than the West Coast, but you take the best teams. Santa Clara, yeah, you can isolate one game when they play New Mexico. You can isolate VCU against New Mexico, and it's like, okay, but you play 35 games or 32 games in the regular season plus conference tournament. And Santa Clara played better. They won 26 games and did better according to the metrics than New Mexico and San Diego State did in theirs. So, yeah, you can say the West Coast Conference, yeah, they got 3 teams. And, yeah, because they had 3 NCAA tournament teams in their conference. Which of the Mountain West teams, based on what they did against their, I don't think San Diego State and New Mexico earned their way in. I didn't think they were going to get in. I didn't think they deserved to be in. Now, if you really start splitting hairs with Santa Clara, should they be in, should they not? Based on what I see, they should be in. They performed the way they needed to. So I don't want to buy into this narrative that the Mountain West should get more teams in just because it was a better conference top to bottom. Because, yeah, how many top 100 teams do you have? However many it is, but it's like top 40 teams that get in. So if you have every team from 90 to 99, sure, you have 10 top 100 teams, but you have 0 NCAA tournament teams. If you're the Mountain West and you have 1 team in the top, let's see, San Diego State is the next highest team. They're 48. You have 1 team in the top 47. Doesn't matter how many top 100 teams you have. You have 1 NCAA tournament team.
One other quick part of this text before we move on, just asking about calling it seeding bias. Will it get much better in the pack? Well, I think that the conference as a whole should be strong. Having Gonzaga in there is certainly going to help big time.
It gives you a quad 1A game, which is something that Utah State has kind of lacked a little bit.
Yeah, so we kind of talked about this a little bit more last week. The top end of the new pack is going to be really good. The bottom end isn't going to be as bad. The middle is going to be about the same. So you don't have quite as bad out of the West Coast Conference or the Mountain West. The high end is still really strong. It's not just one team that carries it. You're going to have 2 or 3, sometimes even 4, who are going to be really good at what they do. So I think that there will be a little bit more respect on the future Pac-12.
Yeah, because San Diego State, they got into the tournament on the strength of beating Houston last year. That was just getting into the tournament. Utah State, they beat Gonzaga. Say they split 1-1 with Gonzaga. That's the kind of win that can get them up. They say, they didn't play any tough teams. Well, next year, well, yeah, they did. Played Gonzaga and San Diego State and quality games against Boise and Colorado State. And if Fresno keeps going up, that's something that's going to help. Now, Utah State's going to have to do some work with this non-conference schedule.
And they'll have plenty of time to get games because they won't have as many conference games on the schedule.
Yeah, so there's hopefully some ways they can improve their non-conference, but their conference schedule will, again, the potential peak of their conference schedule will overall go up. Though top to bottom, it'll only marginally improve. But again, it's when you're starting to split all these hairs, do you have wins against the best of the best? And that's something that's been missing from the Mountain West for the most part, especially the last few years. Now that's going to be there in the Pac-12. And then the rising tide lifts all ships.
Yes.
Potentially.
Yeah.
We got to take a break. When we come back, we'll get to more of these texts. We'll also hear from head coach Jerrod Calhoun, his thoughts, his opinion on the Aggies getting a 9 seed. He wasn't a big fan of it.
No.
We'll talk about that next here on the Full Court Press. Welcome on back to the Full Court Press. The Best of Northern Utah for 2026 has started voting. It began about a week ago, and it'll end on March 25th. So right around the time the Aggies are heading to the Sweet 16, right?
That's right. I like that.
So again, voting is officially open. Best of Northern Utah presented by Alpine Cleaning and Restoration. So this is your chance to support the local businesses you believe in, the places you recommend to friends and families, your go-to restaurants, all that. Your vote helps decide the gold and silver winners in more than 200 categories, and you can vote every single day. So show some love to the businesses that make Northern Utah special. Cast your vote now at bestofnorthernutah.com. So let's go to Jerrod Calhoun's thoughts on the Aggies getting a 9 seed.
Yes.
So the Aggies, they're in the 8-9 game. I thought they were going to be an 8 seed. They end up as a 9 seed. Serves me right for going against what has become conventional wisdom. Bracket Matrix projected them as an 8, so of course they were going to get a 9 seed because
one lower.
That's how it has worked almost every single year for a while.
So what all the experts say, bring that down a notch for the committee.
Yeah, basically. So here's what Jerrod Calhoun had to say when we spoke with him after the selection show they had in the Spectrum with a bunch of fans. Here were his thoughts that went a little bit viral when they were posted on social media a little bit later.
Really happy with the location for our fans and for our players. And, obviously San Diego's, close, but I think the seed was absolutely atrocious. Yeah, I mean, the one thing we don't have is the whatever they're calling it, the quad A, 1A wins. But we've got great metrics on both sides of the ball. We're, top 30 in offense, top 50 in defense. So I thought for sure a 6 or a 7. I was really hoping for one of those. But I think we got to look at it like, hey, we're in the West. That's a huge positive for us and our fans. But I just don't think it was very deserving. I thought we should have been at least a 7.
Yeah, so Jerrod Calhoun thought it was absolutely atrocious.
6 was not going to happen.
No, it never was going to happen.
I mean, I appreciate the wishful thinking there and trying to project where you think your team ought to be. I was a little. I'm still surprised that it was a 9. And then we talked about this earlier. It shows disrespect to the conference as a whole, but disrespect to Utah State as an institution. They just went through and they won the regular season. Then they won the Mountain West tournament, won every game by double digits, and you give them a 9? It really shows disrespect to the Mountain West Conference. Utah State, and I know we've gone through the metrics are what they are, whatever, the games that you played, but this showed that this was a good basketball team, and they were built for the NCAA tournament.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this, and somebody else noticed this and posted about this on social media too, and I forget who it was. I think it was another Mountain West related fan or media, but there was a line that I remember kind of overhearing that was going on during the rest of the selection show, because the Aggies were actually, for once, picked early in the selection show, which was nice, as opposed to, because not just basketball, but it's really football and volleyball and soccer, like they're always like at the end. Like even when you know they're going to be in, they're not really sweating it out, but it's like, why are they always at the end? But they were picked in the second grouping there. But at some point, somebody, and I don't remember who it was, said something like, oh, and you say that, conference tournament results don't matter. And they were talking about Purdue, where Purdue ends up with, I think it was a 2 seed, where they win their conference tournament. I think they were the 7 seed in their tournament. They get a 2 seed in March Madness. And he was like, oh, for those of you who think that conference tournament results don't matter. And I'm like, excuse me?
Yeah. You want to go look at the Mountain West one more time?
Yeah. And you look at around where Utah State is in the KenPom rankings. Utah State is ranked 30th. They're a 9 seed. And mind you, they're similarly ranked in the net and, KPI and all these, team sheet metrics. North Carolina, they're 29th. What are they? They're a 6 seed. Miami, Florida, ranked behind them, a 7 seed. They're a seed line. They're 2 seed lines ahead of the Aggies, and they're ranked below them in KenPom. Georgia, they're ranked 32 in KenPom. They're an 8 seed. Villanova, they're the 8 seed, and they're ranked 33rd. Clemson, they're 36th, and they're an 8 seed. One of the other 9 seeds TCU, they're 43rd in KenPom. Like, and Ohio State, maybe you can argue them as well because, they're an 8 seed and they're 26th. So they're higher up and they're around other 7 and 9 seeds where they're an 8 seed. But it's like, Utah State, like if you take the top 30 teams and put them in a seed based on just 1 through 4 gets a 1 seed, 2 through 8 and so on, Utah State is in the middle of the 7 seeds. So it just doesn't make sense. And there are some people, I know there's one person who was like, it's only Utah State fans and media complaining about it. And so I quote tweeted Ryan Hammer, he's a New Jersey based college basketball influencer. At this point, he's basically independent media. Joe Lunardi, like that guy. And to tell you, Joe Lunardi's job every year is to predict Mountain West 1 bid tournament seeds.
Right.
And this is the first time he's been right in a decade. And even he thought it was dumb. And he's the one who is constantly undervaluing the Mountain West. So it kind of is atrocious that, the Aggies were locked in the 8-9 matchup no matter what they did in the tournament, it seemed like. Or if they didn't do what they, if they'd lost in the first round, they probably would have been a 10 or 11 seed. The only thing they did in winning the Mountain West tournament was maintain their spot in the 8-9 game. Because that's where the committee had them before. And then when they won the whole thing, they kept them in the 8-9 game. And if they'd lost, they'd move down. They could not move up. They could only move down.
I know there's a lot more texts. We'll get through those, but we do need to hit another timeout here on the Full Court Press. If you want to weigh in, we always love to hear from you. 435-339-0321.
Batteries, headlights, wiper blades are all in stock and on sale now at your local Napa Auto Parts. They got Chemical Guys car wash and detailing kits for only $49.99. You got air fresheners, shop towels, seafoam, and more. Again, on sale at your locally owned Napa Auto Parts stores. They got locations from Preston all the way to Providence. We got a lot more text rolling in, and there's some that are presenting the other side of, it's not that bad being in 9C. We have some text coming to that effect. We don't want to present it as all negative and doom and gloom. And even MJ Collins presented a positive outlook. And we're going to get to that. We only have a couple minutes, a minute before we got to hit another timeout for our top of the hour. Wanted to get a couple other texts in. The 9-5 had one. There's a couple of them. There might have been a couple of them.
There's a couple.
There's one about, phantom calls in the Mountain West tournament. I didn't think the referees were really that bad at all. I know we kind of went off on them for the number of fouls they were calling, but in the Aggie games, I thought they were fine. Sure, there's calls I may disagree with, but at least in any of the Aggie games that I was watching personally, I didn't have any particular problem.
In the first half, it seemed like San Diego State had a very friendly whistle.
Yeah.
I thought that kind of evened out as
the
game went on.
By halftime, they had about the same number of fouls, so it evened up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So
that's really all I'd have to say about the foul call. I know there are a lot of San Diego State fans around me really had an issue with that 5-point play.
Yeah, they did.
But it is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. A lot of Aggie fans thought it shouldn't have been a 5-point play. I didn't get too many looks at the replay, but yeah, it is what it is. That's going to do it for this hour. Make sure to tune in. We'll continue the conversation next hour. Welcome on in to the Full Court Press. Jason Walker here with Eric Frandsen on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM The Fan, streaming online at 106.9 The Fan, 106.9thefan.com, the 106.9 The Fan mobile app.
There you go.
And streaming on YouTube, The Fan KLGN on YouTube. And also available on our podcast feed on 106.9thefan.com, on the mobile app, and you can find video replays of our video live streams on YouTube. So however you're listening, watching, we're glad you're here. Text the Young Power Sports of Logan text line, 435-339-0321. We've had texts piling up, and we've got some more to get through. As we've talked, the first hour, starting with the Mountain West Tournament, the redemption tour the Aggies went on, that was obviously an incredibly fun experience for Aggie fans and for the team, obviously, to get that second ring. Of course, they only get one ring for winning the Mountain West Championship, even if they win both.
Yeah, we got to cut down the nets twice.
Yeah, you get to cut down the nets twice.
You
get two trophies.
Hoist a trophy twice.
Yeah, you get two different trophies. You get two different pieces of net. So it was obviously a fantastic experience for them.
And you know what? The team, obviously, the team and the coaches, they deserve all the credit. But there also needs to be some credit given to the fans. That was a great fan base who traveled down there. And really, kudos to all those who contributed and donated to get the herd down there.
Yeah.
There was no question. That was, without a doubt, not even close to the best student section there in the arena. Made a massive difference. I think I saw like some $50,000 was raised to help get the students there, and worth every penny.
Yeah.
Like New Mexico collectively had a big group that was there.
Yeah.
That New Mexico San Diego State game was
it was
loud.
crazy.
It was spicy. There was a fight in the bathroom, I heard.
Wait, really?
Nothing too serious. Somebody slapped somebody else, but Utah State had this massive block of fans that were all together.
Yeah.
Coordinated, loud.
Yeah, Utah State
was awesome.
Utah State had two home games in that tournament.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, San Diego State, I think they ended up having a larger contingent, though it was like 60-40. So like you had the herd, and then you did have a lot of San Diego State fans, and I think there were a lot of people rooting for the underdog, San Diego State, which is rare for them to be the underdog.
Yeah.
But there were moments where I think at their peak they were maybe a little bit louder than Utah State fans, but it was still largely even.
Yeah,
for a really good traveling San Diego State. And then that aside from essentially two home games, one of those being against a team who was technically playing in their literal home venue. And you got an effective home game against them.
Despicable for UNLV fans.
Yeah.
But the Utah State crowd got bigger and bigger every game.
Yeah, it did.
So kudos to all those who made the investment in the trek south to be a part of that. How many of you were going to make the trek even further west to go to San Diego now?
They're trying to fundraise for the herd. It's trying to raise money to get a couple hundred of them there, and that would be, again, really valuable. And Villanova's got to come from even further, so it'll be even harder for them
to get there. Now, Jason, I know we got texts to get through here, but I'm going to throw out a very unpopular opinion. I shared this on social media. Some people didn't like it. The herd was separated in that stadium. It didn't matter.
Oh, there were some people who said it definitely did.
They were still loud. I still heard a coordinated group. Yes, there were some people
they
who
were
like,
separated by 15 seats, not 96 feet.
There was a the media was in the middle of them, so they were separated.
Okay, you cannot compare. You cannot compare.
Oh,
absolutely.
It was still hard.
You cannot compare.
You
cannot compare 15 seats to 90 or literally 120 feet because you got 94 feet of court plus that. You cannot compare
they were still
that.
Coordinated.
You cannot compare that split, Eric. How about we try this? We'll open the door. We'll have you in the other studio, see if we can coordinate if you're standing in the other studio, and then we'll have you go to the front desk.
If Cam Walker needs any evidence of what he plans to do, just go back and watch the Mountain West Conference
That does
tournament.
not count. I can understand why that was unpopular because that is a bullcrap opinion, Eric. Sheesh, I can't.
They made it work. Made it work.
Yeah, that's 7241's on my side. Get him, Jason. I can't believe you would actually say that out loud, Eric. Like I've been talking with fans on social media who don't have reading comprehension. You don't have distance comprehension.
They weren't together. They were separated.
Yeah, by 15 seats, which is the same separation between
Somehow they made it work.
Because they have that's a similar separation to in the spectrum on the end line, that behind the basket, to the ones that sit behind me. And there's, a lack of coordination sometimes between those two sections. That's the same separation. Now have them separated from one basket to the other 100+ feet.
I'd love to see that happen.
You can't tell me that that's the same.
You can have a dominant force behind the basket every time.
You cannot compare that.
Instead of just one half of the game, you can affect the team on both halves of the game.
Yeah, by half as much. 8003 wants me to settle down. I will not settle down.
5452. Eric, the students were separated by one section, not opposite ends of the court.
That's my point. We're talking about 15 seats versus
6391. Thank you, Jason. I heard from students that were there that it was hard to coordinate the cheers. Back down, Eric.
Yeah. So we need to get to some other texts, and this will also kind of help us transition to talking about Villanova. This will calm me down a little bit. We can get this. I need to do some actual film study. I was able to do some statistical stuff, but haven't been able to dive into film study. But a few texts I got to find out because I clicked on some and then didn't read them, so I need to make sure I don't miss ones. If we miss your texts, let me know. 2444 saying, as disrespectful as the 9 seed was, I don't hate the first round matchup. It's just the potential round of 32 matchup against Arizona that would have been nice to avoid with a 7 seed. Hopefully the team can use the seeding as motivation to keep playing like they were in Vegas. If they do that, I have full confidence they'll win on Friday.
Yeah, this whole seeding thing, Coach Calhoun said it on Sunday. Clearly, we've been talking about it. This is just putting a big chip on their shoulder. They're the underdog. And they should come in there like they got something to prove.
Yeah.
I'd rather be in that position than feeling like I'm the favored team and I'm sitting kind of fat and happy.
Yeah. And this does appear to be a good matchup in some respects for the Aggies. I don't think Villanova is like that strong an opponent. They're obviously a good team. They have, they went to overtime with UConn, who's a 2 seed in this tournament. They were close with UConn in another game. They did get upset in the first round of the Big East tournament by Georgetown. So they've got some doozies of games, mixed in. But they're a good team. But I think Utah State has some ability to bother Villanova. Where the Aggies can force a lot of turnovers, where Villanova isn't a super good defensive rebounding team. Mind you, the Aggies actually kind of aren't either. But Villanova also isn't a team that draws a ton of fouls, where that's kind of a weakness. So Villanova may not be as good at exploiting the Aggies' weakness at sometimes fouling a bit. Villanova is not a great team at blocking shots, and that's the kind of team you need to be to,
really disrupt Utah State.
To disrupt Utah State's offense. And Villanova is also, to talk about their free throw shooting, they're also bad free throw shooters. Worse than the Aggies. For those of you who want to say Utah State's a bad free throw shooting team, Villanova's worse this season. 290th in the country. The Aggies are 250th.
But we'll get into Villanova with greater detail as we go through the week.
That's my initial breakdown of kind of some of the matchups, because, we do need to get through some more of these texts here. 6543. So nice to see the Aggies get in. Now it's up to them to perform. No more easy matchup. No more easy teams from here on. Nice to see the Mountain West get 5 teams in the NIT. Very weird to see the Mountain West as a one-bid conference, the NCAA. When was the last time that happened? Main reason the SDSU declined the NIT bid was what? Pride? So, a few things in there. I think we already answered the question from 6543 a couple times, but if you missed those, it's 2017.
2017, last time the Mountain West only sent one team to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, that year Nevada swept the regular season and conference tournament titles and went to the NCAA tournament as, pretty sure it was Nevada, right? I'm not misremembering that. I'm pretty sure that was it. And then I believe, Eric, I think you saw the stated reason from San Diego State for them not going to the NIT, and that was injuries.
Right. They, according to some statements from San Diego State, they had an invitation, an opportunity to go to the NIT, but they declined due to injuries. Yeah. And
they are missing LZ Harrington, who's been out for a while. He tried to come back from an injury, but then he was out for the season. And then Miles Heide suffered I don't know if it was a fracture, but it was some hand injury.
Really hurt his hand against New Mexico.
Ended up missing the championship game against the Aggies. So they were down. Magoon Guas still been. I think he's mostly worked his way back from that knee injury, but
Miles Bird got knocked down a couple times in the championship game.
Yeah, so they're a bit banged up, and there's also probably some. Yeah, I guess we were kind of done. That might be there too. But the injuries gave them a pretty easy excuse because it is also kind of a legitimate thing with some of their guys being banged up.
I got to find the quote here from Sundance Wicks.
Okay, while we do that, I'll jump on this next text. We can jump back to this in a second.
It's about the NIT.
5338 saying, I've said it before and I'll say it again, never underestimate the propensity of the selection committee to shaft the agriculturalists. Do they win the tournament if they're not the 1 seed? 3 West Coast Conference teams and only 1 Mountain West team in the Big Dance is a joke. We also had somebody else text in about West Coast Conference. I think it was 63. Was it 6391? Somebody texted in about the West.
Somebody else brought that up, but
I forget who it was. But we kind of did that a little bit where it's like, to me, it's like, okay, the Mountain West is a better team top to bottom, but the West Coast had 3 really good teams and 2 teams that were as good, if not better, than anyone in the Mountain West. You can debate St. Mary's and Utah State. They're similarly ranked. St. Mary's is slightly higher. Santa Clara is basically, I guess, slightly above New Mexico and San Diego State. So, you had 3 teams that were NCAA tournament teams, and nobody else was close. The Mountain West had 4 teams, at least 3 teams that were in or close. It's not about how good the team top to bottom is as far as how many teams you should get into the NCAA tournament. It's just how many teams do you happen to have that are good enough to get into the tournament. There were years where the Mountain West were getting in more teams to the NCAA tournament than the ACC or Pac-12. The year they got 6, I think they had as many or maybe more bids than I think one of the power conferences. But were they truly a better conference than that other, some of the power conferences? Probably not. But they just happened to get more teams in. So I don't like comparing just the raw number of teams you get in because that doesn't always reflect the strength, or it can be a short-sighted way of trying to analyze who should have gotten in or who didn't. You don't just say the West Coast got 3 teams in. That's dumb because they're worst conference. That's really reductionist of the conversation, and I just don't like that kind of thinking.
No. I want to share this about the NIT because 5 schools out of the Mountain West are going.
Yep.
San Diego State is not.
Yeah, so let me see if I can get it all in one go. It's Nevada, Boise State, Wyoming, UNLV, and Colorado State.
I believe that's correct. Okay. I can verify that in a second. But first, I want to get this quote from Sundance Wicks, the Wyoming coach. Because Wyoming, wow, Wyoming's going to the NIT. They were 99 in the net. A very kind of average season. 17-14 overall was their win and loss record. But here's a comment from Sundance Wicks. He says, we will always accept an invitation to the National Invitational Tournament. If we don't ever get an NCAA automatic qualifier bid or an at-large bid in March Madness, we'll always accept this because it is our civic duty as basketball coaches of basketball players to normalize playing basketball as long as you can, because that's what we get paid to do nowadays. This is our job. My wife can't just wake up someday and be like, you know what? I'm going to opt out of teaching today. This is what we need to normalize, and this NIT field is outstanding. It's like mid-major madness, and I love it. Kudos to Auburn for accepting the bid. That's outstanding.
That's patriotism.
Yeah, you know what? And
I get what he's saying, though. I
like this.
I don't necessarily disagree with him there.
If you're a coach and players and you enjoy what you're doing, why not take an opportunity to keep playing basketball together? Teams that turn down opportunities to go to bowl games in football or NIT in basketball, either A, are just, sour over the fact that they didn't get a bigger invitation, and then they're the mentality of, I'm going to take my ball and go home, or they really just don't like each other, and they don't want to do much more together. There is a third factor where injuries are a real thing. If your team is decimated by injuries, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Why are we going through this exercise where we might get even more guys hurt? So it's really one of 3 things why teams don't go, and neither of them are really that good. One of them is justifiable, and that's injuries. The other 2, it's really kind of sad and pathetic.
Yeah, especially for guys who, at this point, like if you're getting an invitation to the NIT, odds are you're with a program that has enough money to be throwing around NIL. So most of these guys are professional level athletes, essentially, by view of getting paid. And I like that Coach Wicks brings that up, where it's like, you're getting paid.
This is our job, is to play games and to coach games. This is what we're here to do.
Yeah.
You get a chance, most of these get a chance to host another game. Yeah, opportunity to add more revenue to your bottom line. Some teams obviously do have to travel, but you get a chance to play more games and win more games and add to your overall status as a program and as a player. Like some of these guys, they're auditioning for opportunities for next year. You're continuing that audition, and so I really think it's pretty lame when teams turn down these opportunities to keep playing. This isn't the CBI where you only have a few hundred fans in your arena playing some school that you've never heard of before. The NIT is still has some prestige, and schools should participate in that.
Yeah, and it's for the love of the game, if nothing else. But it's also, I don't know if the word civic duty sound really weird to say when you're talking about basketball, but
these are nationally broadcast games.
It's your job.
Yeah.
It's like if I just decide, well, I'm just not going to show up and do the show because I don't want to, I rolled my ankle this morning. I'm not going to do the show.
By the way, that quote courtesy of Alex Taylor, who follows the Wyoming Cowboys. If you don't follow him, well, I guess we're moving out of the Mountain West. Maybe you don't want to follow him.
If you like mid-major football and basketball, you should be following him.
Yeah.
Reminder, we're going to keep getting through a lot of these texts because we have a lot of them.
Shortened show.
Yeah, we have a shortened show.
Utah Mammoth playing tonight.
We're going to be going as long as we need to on the YouTube stream, but the radio portion will shift over to the Utah Mammoth. Those of you listening on the stream, the audio stream on 1069thefan.com or on the mobile app, does that one switch over to the Mammoth?
Yep.
Yeah, it'll switch over to the Mammoth. Obviously,
over the air and the
over the airways on the stream. On YouTube, we will still be going as long as we need to get through all these texts and get our thoughts. These initial thoughts on the match with the UNLV will go as long as we need to.
But can we get the comments from MJ Collins?
Yes. Yeah.
I want to make sure we get that in.
Yeah, because this will kind of help because there's a few more of these texts that are starting to lead us into the optimistic side of playing UNLV and even being in this matchup.
Villanova.
Villanova. What did I say?
UNLV.
UNLV. With Villanova. There's a V in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was MJ Collins' thoughts. A little more optimistic about being in this 8-9 game.
But seeding, I was hoping to get the 6-7 seed. But of course, it didn't go out that way. But 8-9, we're in the tournament. We still have a chance to, make something happen. And who wouldn't want the top dogs after we take down Villanova? That's what it's about. Make it to the Sweet 16, and at that point, we're the number one seed in my eyes after we, take care of business.
I think I just realized our video stream might not have been playing our audio for a while.
Oh,
I finished playing the MJ Collins audio, so hopefully those of you watching on the video stream haven't already dipped out. But continuing this, and we actually might need to switch over to the video stream to finish things out here, as we've only got about another minute or so until we've got to hand it over to the Utah Mammoth. But 2444 saying, any update on Mason's ankle? I was holding my breath after he rolled it and went down. I know he finished the game, but sometimes those can stiffen up and worsen in the days immediately after. I really hope he's back to as close as 100% possible by Friday.
well, the advantage is that it's a Friday game and not a Thursday game. So there's an extra day for Mason to recover and to heal and to gain strength. But I mean, he was able to play the rest of the game. That happened in the first half. But he was able to continue to play, and he was still pretty effective in what he did. Maybe not quite as explosive, but I think he'll be okay.
Yeah. So that's going to do it for our radio portion. Those of you listening on 106.9 FM or 1390 AM or on the stream on 1069thefan.com or the 1069 The Fan mobile app. We're not going to take it all the way up to 6 o'clock, but we'll finish out some of these texts. Give some more initial thoughts on Villanova, then we'll wrap it up. So stick with us here on and switch over to YouTube. All right, so we are back here on YouTube. Jason Walker here with Eric Frandsen. We won't be on for too much longer. It depends. If you keep sending in texts, 435-339-0321, we'll keep going through them. We'll just kind of finish talking about the rest of these texts, some of our thoughts, and then just get some initial impressions on, Utah State against Villanova, odds of them winning the game, and what strikes us about the matchup initially. 3933. I know we missed a couple of these texts, so apologies for missing those because there were a couple of them. One saying, "Let's stop crying over the spilt milk. We shouldn't even care because we are not in the Mountain West Conference anymore. How sweet is that to see San Diego State not make it to the tournament? Love listening to Butcher whine." Yeah, San Diego State not making the tournament's pretty rare.
It is.
And that's not something that they're used to. Of course, it'd be like the Aggies missing the tournament at this point. It's something they're very used to. And if the Aggies miss the tournament, that's not going to fly very well with Aggie fans because that's the expectation. You make it every single year, or at the very least, you don't miss it more than 1 year in a row.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that there's kind of mixed feelings over all of this, where I feel like the Mountain West is still a good basketball league and should be seen as such. And so I'm surprised that only one team got an invitation. Yeah. But on the other hand, Utah State's on the way out the door. And what better way for sweet justice for all their legal wrangling and back and forth with the conference and some of its institutions on the way out to say, you know what? You're only going to get one. We're not giving you any extra NCAA units.
So you're saying that the Aggies
you're not going to earn any extra money off of our backs.
Or you say the Aggies should also lose the first round game just to say no more units than that?
No, I'm not going to go that far. I'm not going to go that far.
So, because if they make a Final Four run, then they get a bunch of units.
That's true.
So,
and that'll look great for Utah State.
It would, yeah. I think every Aggie fan would very willingly hand as many units as possible to the Mountain West for, in fair trade for a Final Four run.
Yes.
That was something that it was a post that I saw earlier today. Maybe I should have prepared it so I could show it on the YouTube stream, but it was all of the teams that who had the most appearances in the NCAA tournament without an appearance in the Final Four. Did you happen to see this, Eric?
No.
Okay, let me see how many, if you can guess. Utah State is one of them. That's why it got brought up. Can you guess any of the other? There are 5 teams on here.
5 teams.
Yeah. There are teams that all have at least 26 appearances in the NCAA tournament, and none of them have made the Final Four.
Oh, gosh.
You're familiar with at least one of these teams.
New Mexico?
No.
VCU?
No.
I'm familiar with at least one of these teams. BYU?
Yes, BYU. They are the team with the most NCAA tournament appearances without making a Final Four. They've made 33 appearances, no Final Fours.
Wow. So how many teams are on this list?
So there's 6. Utah State and BYU are 2 of them.
2. Oh.
There's 2 SEC teams and 2 Big East teams.
Oh, man. Tennessee?
Tennessee is one of them.
Oh, okay.
There you go. The others are Missouri, who has 31 appearances and no Final Four. Xavier, 30. Tennessee's at 28. And Creighton is actually tied with the Aggies for 26 appearances and no Final Four appearances. Though I was doing the math and I was like, hey, Utah State, their highest seed ever is an 8. A lot of these other teams they've all had better than that.
Yeah.
And,
it's super hard to make a run when you're always perennially fighting against blue chip programs and always a double-digit seed.
Yeah, so I looked, how often have these other teams had better than an 8 seed? And so Creighton, 7 times. And then I also looked at how often have they been a top 3 seed? Those are the teams that are really likely to make it to the Final Four. So I've got Creighton 7 times better than 8, twice a top 3 seed. BYU 11 times better, including I think their last 4 appearances in the tournament, they were a 6 seed. But they've been a top 3 seed twice. One of those was that Gyromania run. Xavier 14 times better than 8 seed, 5 top 3 seeds. Missouri 14 times, 7 times as a top 3 seed, I think including times as a 1 and a 2 seed.
Wow.
And Tennessee, similar, 15 times better than 8 seed, 7 of those as a top 3 seed. So there are teams that have choked in the NCAA tournament, like Tennessee, Missouri, Xavier to a degree. Not as harsh on Creighton and BYU, but still they've had multiple times as top seeds, as favorites to like maybe make a Final Four run. And the Aggies are out here. We've had 26 appearances in the tournament, and like 20 of those are as like a 14 seed. Like, give them a break on how many times they've been to the tournament for a lack of Final Four appearances. But like, it does say like they haven't had that magical run. Like San Diego State, they've got that one magical run. Florida Atlantic, there are teams that have done it as the seeds that Utah State has been. So at some point, you just got to do it. You got to make the Cinderella run.
Wow.
8632. Hopefully, I tried turning the volume up. Let us know if it got. I turned it up a little bit. Hopefully, it's not like peaking on the YouTube stream. 4781 talking about. He was the one that sent in about I've Carson Temple just take one for the team and saying make them enter concussion protocol indefinitely. Well, just concussion protocol. You only got to do it for one game.
Yeah.
So if you want to play dirty.
Yeah, you don't want to end a guy's career.
No. So,
but no, look, I'll be honest, I haven't really dug into Villanova. I have seen a few games that Arizona has played. Arizona's good.
Yeah, they're a dang good team.
They are good. So, Aggies will have a tough test if they can get past Villanova on Friday and face Arizona on Saturday. But look, this is a venue that Utah State's familiar with. They were there just a few weeks ago. Hopefully, there are a good number of Aggies who make the trip to Southern California.
Hopefully, they play better this time down there than they did last time.
Yeah, true. They have some tournament experience there, though they struggled in that one.
Which one was that?
That was Brandon Roy, Washington.
Oh.
I think that was a J.C. Carroll team, and the Aggies struggled in that one. Roy was just amazing.
Yeah, he was a really good player.
He was fantastic.
As long as if he wasn't hurt, that was the only way. The basketball gods had to nerf Brandon Roy by giving him brittle bones or whatnot.
Yeah, I traveled down to that one, got to see that one in person, and had very brief conversations about trying to get down to this one, but I have other obligations, unfortunately, and not able to get out of those. But we're going to send you.
Yeah, it's sending me. So
Jason's going to be there.
I get another trip in March. I never get to do anything in March for myself. It's always basketball. Such a sad fate for me.
It's so
I know.
hard. Yeah.
I have to go to Vegas.
To hang out in Vegas for a few days.
And then I have to go to San Diego. That's just.
It's a rough life. Someone's got to do it though.
Yeah, so I'll take one for the team. Eric, you can't make the enormous sacrifice of going to San Diego, but I will.
You will. Your graciousness surprises.
Yeah, I'm being very gracious
I'm
in
humbled.
helping you guys out. So, to give a quick lowdown on Villanova, I did a bit of a write up on Cache Valley Daily, just kind of an initial. I went through some of the players and where they're at. I'll do some film diving and look a little bit deeper into some of their statistical trends, but they had a second team all Big East guard, Caden Lewis. I'm not 100% sure I'm pronouncing his first name right. A freshman. That was kind of the one thing that MJ Collins knew about the team is they had a really good freshman guard. Lewis, he was obviously all freshman for the Big East as well on their all freshman team. Not freshman of the year. There was another player who was really good there. And they also have a 6'10" forward who averages a double-double, 12 points, 10 rebounds. That's Duke Brennan. And then they had another all Big East player. Duke Brennan was third team all Big East, and Tyler Perkins, a 6'4" guard/wing. He was also third team all Big East. He was their leading scorer, I think 13.7 per game. They have I think they have 4 players averaging double figures, or maybe it was even 5. I can't spell Villanova. Holy cow. My goodness.
2 L's.
That's not what was tripping me up, surprisingly enough. It was after the 2 L's. Like, how do you spell Villanova? And I can't spell anything. I can't type and talk at the same time. But yeah, those are kind of their 3 players. But their depth does stand out. So yeah, okay, 5 players in double figures. They have someone averaging 13.7, 12.3, 12.4, 11.9, 10.0, and then one at 9.2. So they've got 6 players at 9.2 points or more, but very guard heavy. Those 5 players in double figures, all of them are 6'4" and under. One of them 6'10", 235, 240, depending on which roster you're looking at, how much Duke Brennan weighs there. So this is a team that does
definitely in Utah State's favor.
Yeah, like Utah State has more length on the wings. Now, Matthew Hodge, he's that guy averaging 9.2. He's at 6'8", so they're not completely lacking in some size, and they've got a couple of 6'6", 6'3" guys. But like, this is a game where Utah State's going to have a size advantage on the guard line and on the wings, and then they're not really going to be outsized in the front court. It'll be a bunch of 6'8" and 6'10" guys going at each other on both sides. So Utah State is not outsized in this matchup, and I don't think they're really outsped in the sense that Mason Falslev and MJ Collins and Drake Allen, I'm going to have to go watch film and see just how quick guys like Tyler Perkins and Caden Lewis and Bryce Lindsey and David Askew are they like super fast? But like Utah State was generally able to keep in front of Dayton Albury, who is lightning quick.
Right.
So, and none of these guys these guys have decent size for guards, but they're not like 220-pound guards. They're like 190, 200-pound guards. So they don't come across as like super strong. I haven't seen them on film yet to see if they're like super fast, but the Aggies have stayed in front of super fast guards. So really it's just going to come down to great preparation and scouting, because that's where the Aggies have struggled at times, going up against good, teams with lots of guards like Fresno State at times, where they actually cause some problems, but a lot of it is just scouting and then just being disciplined enough to stay in front of your guy, which the Aggies did incredibly well in the Mountain West Tournament. They stayed in front of their guy, big or small, they just did it.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the big key for the Aggies in this one. They're going to face a quick team that has a couple of bigs that could cause some problems, but matchup-wise and athleticism-wise, the Aggies are going to match up and probably even have an advantage. And so at that point, you begin looking at other factors, which we will be diving into later this week.
Yeah, and I just, we all talked about this tournament that Utah State just went through, this Mountain West tournament, and looking ahead to the NCAA tournament facing Villanova first. But I want to just take a second to pivot back to talk about MJ Collins. It was so fun watching him in Las Vegas. I know Mason had that great first game. It was like he wanted to prove a point. He was going up against the other guy who was getting consideration for Conference Player of the Year. He wanted to prove a point that it wasn't a contest. It was him definitively. But beyond that, MJ Collins, I thought, had a great 3-game tournament for Utah State. And one of the things that really surprised me about him, or not surprised me, but stood out to me is it's hard for me to think of other players in Utah State's history who can do some of the things that MJ Collins does. The way he can attack the rim, and he's a highlight reel when he throws down a dunk.
Yeah.
But also the way he can shoot from 3. But it's not just shoot from 3, but shoot when it doesn't look like he has any space. Most other guys for Utah State, and a lot of college players, they won't pull the trigger if they don't feel like they've got space. MJ Collins can get a shot off when it looks like he doesn't have space, and he'll still be effective at it. He's not afraid to shoot a 3 in traffic or if somebody's coming at him or closing out on him. That's one of the things that's really stood out to me watching him and observing him over this tournament is just how confident he was playing, and that he wasn't affected by teams or players closing out on him or trying to crowd him. When he was rising up to take the shot, he was confident it was going to go in.
Yeah, and I think something that kind of builds off that, because obviously there's the confidence to shoot the 3, but I think something that goes beyond that, because like statistics-wise, he didn't actually have that great of a shooting tournament from the outside. Now, against San Diego State, he went 4 of 10, and against UNLV, he hit a couple of key 3-pointers to help the Aggies pull away. So like going 2 for 8 against UNLV, it wasn't that big a deal. Sure, he missed 6 3-pointers against San Diego State, but he hit 2 in the clutch to help the Aggies pull away. So his 3-point shooting wasn't really a problem, and 30% over a 3-game stretch isn't the worst thing to ever happen to a player. So, yeah. And it was a high difficulty level of shot too, as you pointed out. To me, the thing that I think MJ Collins made the biggest difference was that he wasn't just a shooting player, because sometimes Ian Martinez last year would get into this trap, and something where he faded down the stretch was, and MJ Collins had a very similar start to the year that Ian Martinez did to last year, where they were both
a lot of similarities.
They were both shooting absurd numbers. Like Ian Martinez was like in the 60+% from three. MJ Collins was like 55+% from three. They were taking contested threes. They were taking fadeaway threes. They were hitting everything. They could have three guys draped all over them, and they were hitting the shot. And then they came back down to earth, as all people must do. And Ian Martinez, while he had double figures in every single game, I think, up until his very last. And so he was still consistent in a lot of ways. And much like with MJ Collins, he was never really bad. Like, he was still double figures in almost every single one of these games. I can pick two games, the entire in the entirety of conference play where he had less than 10 points, although two of them were losses, at Nevada and at UNLV. But the thing that was a difference, and I think it was a difference against New Mexico as well in the regular season finale where he had 27, is he was a 3-level scorer and someone who would attack the rim. Like, he wasn't just a guy who would get hot from three every now and again, which, like, that's kind of what Jake Hall was in a lot of cases. When he played the Aggies, it was like he just hit a bunch of three-pointers. Sure, he does have that kind of step-back fadeaway that he's hit a couple times in the clutch, but he really struggled to be a three-level scorer. Like, it was the thing that Sam Merrill kind of struggled with up until his last year, where he was a complete three-level scorer, and even to some degree his junior year, but he really evolved his senior year to being a three-level scorer that you couldn't stop because he could get anywhere on the court and hit his shot. So MJ Collins, where he's attacking the rim and using his athleticism, hitting some of those tough mid-range shots, which really, elevate you as a scorer. If you can hit that shot, at an efficient level, you become unstoppable, because most teams will give you that shot because it's inefficient for like 90% of players. For that 10% that can hit it, that makes you dangerous. And MJ Collins was hitting those floaters in the paint, and getting to the rim, drawing fouls. He shot 11 free throws in the tournament. Of course, he didn't shoot any against San Diego State, but got to the line against UNLV, got to the line against Nevada. And so that, and that was something that helped him kind of get going a little bit against Nevada, where he was only 3 of 9 from the field, but he was 6 of 7 from the free throw line. That helped him contribute scoring-wise. So MJ Collins became more than just a guy who was entirely reliant on how well he was shooting from three, because he's had games like that where he's just shoots a bunch of three-pointers, and if he doesn't make those, he doesn't score a ton of points. But he really evolved. And then there's obviously the defense and rebounding and increased assists and steals. There's a whole lot of that, but yeah, MJ Collins has been the exact kind of player they needed him to be in these last 4 games. And if he is that again on Friday, the Aggies are going to beat Villanova, and it might not be close if he's the kind of player he's been for, since just about the start of March.
Yeah.
Except for the UNLV game. Ignore that one.
Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure I highlighted him, just the type of tournament run he had, and just some of the things that he did, what he was doing over the course of those games to really help Utah State provide that offense in different parts. Didn't back down, was aggressive, and just had big momentum plays for Utah State.
Yeah.
I want to get to 8632, who's texted in. Says, we all know the Full Court Press's real name is the Conference Expansion and Realignment Show, but could we see a rebrand to the Utah State Coaches Carousel Show come April? Can't see Calhoun staying if we lose in the first round.
That's something we should definitely consider. Yeah, the Coaches Carousel Show, because, the Aggies lose in the first round. Heck, I feel like the best chance for the Aggies to hold on to Jerrod Calhoun might very well be making it to the Sweet 16, because at that point, when do Sweet 16 games happen? Are they in April?
No, only the championship games are in April.
You sure?
Right?
I think the Final Four might get into, because it goes like into the first or second week of April, I think. Because it's like the 20th, it's like the 19th to the 21st or something like that is the first round. You're looking at a calendar over there.
Yeah, I'm looking at the calendar.
Let me see. There's a calendar over that. See, okay, so it's the 19th to the 21st, I think. Or no. Oh, I know. Excuse me, 19th to the 22nd. The 19th is this Thursday. Then we go through Sunday the 22nd. Second round games would then happen the 26th through the 29th, right?
So Sweet 16 is March 26th and 27th. Elite 8 is the 28th, 29th.
So they got to make the Final Four.
So then the Final Four is April 4th with the championship on April 6th.
So yeah, just make a Final Four run because that's when Cincinnati is officially firing their head coach is on April 1st.
April 1st, yeah.
So yeah, that's the official stuff.
I'm sure there's bonus structure in his current
Calhoun?
contract. Yeah.
Oh, there is. I know there is because I've read it. And there is in literally everyone's. But it's honestly probably not that much.
Yeah.
To be honest,
it'll be tough no matter the outcome. This week and maybe even next, it'll be tough regardless the outcome to compete with Cincinnati.
Yeah,
they're going to throw more money at him. It's his alma mater. He's from that state. He's from that area. It's going to be tough. I know Cam Walker and others are going to try to do their best to retain him. It's going to be an interesting couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I'll say this and we'll get into this more later, but to finish off the show talking about this, let's say Calhoun leaves. You're currently paying Jerrod Calhoun roughly $1.9 million. You bring in the next head coach, you pay him $1 million. That's roughly what the last, since Craig Smith, the total compensation has been about $900,000 when they start out. Pay the next coach roughly that, maybe a little bit more to try and get him here. So you got $700,000-800,000 to work with right there per year with with not paying your head coach as much. Then you get $4 million, between $4 and $4.5 million from the buyout from Jerrod Calhoun. Spread that out over 2-3 years. You're looking at $1 to $2 million a year that you can pretty much spend on player retention, on bringing in transfers, maybe making things easier with having more charter flights. Like if Utah State loses Jerrod Calhoun, that is not something you easily overcome. But you get handed the money and the tools, and obviously you already have the things that have helped the Aggies overcome that before.
Right.
So you lose Jerrod Calhoun, but you get well compensated for the fact, and well compensated in ways that you can immediately use to retain players or bring in high-level transfers that can help the next coach come in. The next coach that will already be stepping into the environment that has turned, and at that point would have turned 4 coaches into Power 4 candidates.
Yeah.
So the Aggies lose Jerrod Calhoun.
They'll be fine.
They will be well positioned both in program success and in monetary resources to make next year just as special as the last 7 or 8.
Because it's out there. Everybody knows it's a high-profile position. It'll be a high-profile opportunity. You're going to be in the Pac-12. You'll be playing against some very good programs.
Yeah.
It's a great track record. It's a great fan support. You're built to succeed if you come to Utah State.
Yeah, the best up-and-coming coaches will be looking at Utah State, and the Aggies will have a pick of the litter.
Yes.
So
yeah.
That's going to do it for us here on the Full Court Press, here on YouTube. Thank you so much for checking us out here on the Fan KLGN. Make sure to tune in every weekday. It'll be tricky. Well, Eric, you're going to be here the whole week. I'll be calling in from San Diego.
Yeah, but
this week.
We are hosting a lot of these games for the NCAA Tournament, starting with the first 4 tomorrow. So we're going to have a lot of these games broadcast on the Fan, which means not much of the Full Court Press this week. Nothing on Thursday or Friday because it's wall-to-wall NCAA coverage, but it will cut into our program both Tuesday and Wednesday.
Yeah.
So we'll have a little bit. We'll try to still get in to preview the matchups and the storylines, get you ready for what's happening with the Aggies and Villanova.
Yeah. But that'll make it all the more important to follow us here on the Fan KLGN because we've turned this into a tool to help us bring our normal Full Court Press content. If you don't
regardless of other things happening.
If you want to still listen to the NCAA tournament on the radio, that is definitely an option. And since we'll have it, all day, especially Thursday and Friday, make sure you tune in for those. But for those of you who look forward to this 2-hour block of myself and Eric Frandsen, we'll still find ways to be here on YouTube here with our stream. Although we're going to have to make things work on Thursday and Friday because I'll be out of town.
Yeah.
But we're going to do our best to continue bringing the best coverage of the Utah State Aggies, along with, as always, being the home of the NCAA Tournament on radio here in the Valley. So for myself, Jason Walker, here with Eric Frandsen, we'll catch you guys tomorrow.